Miriam was born in 1940 to a missionary family on a small island off Celebes, now Sulawesi, in Indonesia. In 1942, just before Miriam turned 2, her family was interned in Sumatra by the Japanese. She was 5 when the war ended. The following are a few of her experiences in the Japanese internment camps, which she had recalled with help from her mother and her nanny Iwa.
In Brastagi in the beginning, the conditions were not that bad. We had food, we had water, sanitation wasn't bad, but after about a year it became worse and worse and worse. At that time we didn't have shoes anymore, we walked on bare feet, and I remember not having only one dress, and that's about it. I was about 3 years old, and smuggling started in the camp. It must have been about 1943. There wasn't enough food, so at night women tried to get through the barbed wire somehow to get outside and get food. Or at night, native people from outside came to the camp and brought food. So it was one night that Iwa went outside and with another 10-year-old boy, and try somehow to get food for us. When they tried to go back into the camp, they were pretty well caught by a Japanese soldier, and all they knew is that it was a young boy and that it was a native person, because there were only 3 native people in this camp of 1,600 women and children. The next day they visited the family of those 3 native people, and so they came to our family and recognized Iwa, or they thought they recognized Iwa, not for 100%, but in case it was, my mother was taken away. And I remember worrying about her, because if she was taken away, I knew something bad was going to happen to her. So she always told us not to go after her when she was taken away, because it had happened before that she was taken away, because she was the head of our barrack. So if anything bad happened in the camps, all the heads of the barracks were asked to come and were punished by the Japanese for whatever reason. So this time my mother was taken, and she had about half an hour probably, to prepare herself to go. And she knew that she might be killed. So she asked us children to sit around her, and she I don't remember it too well anymore, but she read the 23rd Psalm out of the Bible and prayed with us. And I knew if she did that, then that was pretty bad. So when the soldiers came and to pick her up, I first stayed behind, and then I thought, I go after them, see what happens with her. Because if they are going to kill her, I had to be with her. So I went around the barrack after them, and then in the front there was their office, and there were a few steps, and then on the left side there was their office. And when I came there, I sat on the steps, and my mother was already inside, and they were talking at first. And then, you know, I was like a little girl. I was looking at my little dress, and I remember having a dress with little ducks at the bottom, and I thought it was very beautiful. I was very beautiful. You know, in all the misery, I still saw the beauty. Inside, there was a lot of shouting, and there was a whole, you know, a commotion. I cannot tell in words how it sounded, but it sounded awful. When my mother started to scream, then I thought, this is going to be it. So somehow the words from my dad came to me, you know, look after Mama. So I just went inside in my innocence. And I saw them standing in a circle around her. At the top, each held one of the arms. At the bottom, there were two holding her feet. And they were turning her around and around and around. And then one after the other were raping her. But when they saw me, they dropped my mother and looked at me. And they really were caught with their pants down. They pulled up their pants. And at first I didn't know what to do. But then when my mother was lying there and she didn't say anything, and she couldn't talk, and she looked so horrible, I got her dress, and she put her dress on. And the soldiers just looked at us in disbelief. They just didn't know what to do with me, I guess. And my mother had trouble standing. And then I took her hand en said, kom maar mam, ik breng je wel thuis. And that means, come dear mom, I will bring you home. She said, you are never going to talk about this to Papa. He is never allowed to know this. Because of course then the shame as a woman would be on you, you know, in those days. So I took that with me all my life. I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody about this, so I didn't. I had completely forgotten that for 40 years, until after my father passed away in the 70s. And it was interesting. After he died, I had nightmares about it. And it came back and I remembered. So very young already, 3-4-year-old, I looked after my little brother Case. And it was one of those days that I was playing outside in the sand, and all of a sudden I felt a hand on my head, and I looked up and I saw that it was a Japanese soldier. I got up and I bowed the way my mother and Eva had taught me. When you see a Japanese soldier, you always have to bow. And I did, and then I looked at him, but I didn't recognize him. And then I found out he was Mr. Sada, my mother, or because he wanted to see my mother. He had come in the camp, and it was somewhere in the beginning of, that what happened in the beginning of 1944, that he had come in the Brastagi camp as a commander, and he was the one who was in our Sibolga camp. It was so long ago I didn't remember him, but my mother was telling us, you know, when he was visiting us, he helped us, and he gave medicine and he gave food. I walked with him, and this walking with him, that became a daily thing. He came, and then sometimes little Keisha was allowed to walk with him too, and Pim was allowed to walk, but mostly Pim stayed in the barrack with my mother when she was looking after the sick people, and Keisha and I were walking with him. But it didn't take long. He had a whole slew of kids with him. It happened one day that he asked me, Iteke, you want to write a letter to your dad? I said, yes, but I don't know where he is. I think he is in the jail. The last thing I heard, he was in the jail in Sibolga. And he said, no, your dad is not in Sibolga. I think your dad is in Sirengo-Rengo. I didn't know. I couldn't even, pronounce the words. So he said, you write a letter, and you write a letter with your mama. Anytime I didn't understand Mr. Sada, I looked for my mother and asked her what it meant, the English words. So, and then she translated for me. But after a few months, Mr. Sada could speak a few words of Dutch, and so he always was able to talk to us. So one day we sat down and I wrote my letter, and my mother wrote her letter, and I brought it to Mr. Sadatu for my father. So then he put them in his pocket, and he got some more letters, I think, from other kids. And so that was the end of it. But then one day he came back, and instead of walking, he told me to kneel down in front of him. So that's what I did. He said, kneel for me, Iteke. Kneel down for me, in front of me. So that's what I did. And then he put his head against my head, And he started to cry. And I didn't understand why he was crying. And I asked him, why are you crying? Why are you so sad? He said he had to go outside the camp because he was going to be beheaded. I didn't know what beheading meant, so I didn't think much of it. There was a lot of commotion going on outside the camp, and I was just standing there with a couple of other people, and all of a sudden I saw Mr. Sadat coming with a group of all other soldiers, and he was pushed to the front, and I remember that there was a flag with a flagpole. It was the Japanese flag, white with a red circle, and he was tied to that post, and it still didn't dawn to me what was going to happen to him. I had no idea. I do remember that he had letters in his pockets, and they threw down the letters out of his pockets. And I looked at the letters, and I saw my letter, and I was going over to him, and give him the letter back, because he was going to bring it to my dad, to my papa. And he shouldn't forget it, because he told me he was going to bring it. So I was going to give it back to him. But then all of a sudden he started to shout, and he shouted to me, Iteke, go back, ga terug. That's what he said in Dutch. Go back, Iteke. Otherwise you will be next. He said it in Dutch. Anders word jij de volgende. Something like that he said. And then the soldiers were taking all his, I called them ribbons, on his uniform. And they took that off, and they were so beautiful. I thought, they were the most beautiful things he had. And they threw that on the ground too. So I looked at it and I thought, I can put it in my pocket and I can hold it for him. So when he is finished with the beheading, I can give it back to him. In my innocence, I still didn't know what was going to happen. They lowered the flag, so I knew that was his flag. They lowered the flag, and then he had to kneel down, and they chopped his head off. They beheaded him. I came inside, and then I said to my mother, they took off his head. Why did they do that? And then my mother said, oh, they beheaded him. And did you see that? Mm-hmm. You have to forget. You have to forget those things. You cannot see those things. That's something like that, she said. And I tell you, I forgot those things. I forgot him for many years. he was beheaded by his own people. Is something I will never understand. Ever. What did he do wrong? He did not obey the Japanese rule to bring extra letters to the men's camp. You know, my parents died. My mother 5 years ago, my dad about 30 years ago. I loved them dearly. But I went through the process of grieving. But for this man, I still grieve. I still grieve till today. I think it was the beginning of August. Women were ordered to start digging. And of course they didn't know where they had to dig for. Well, they had to make a huge hole. They had to dig a big hole. Many were unable to do it, but you know, the ones who could do had to do it. And later on we found out that that hole would have been our grave. The Japanese on Sumatra, what they did is they tried from the smaller camps. You see, we started in Sibolga with 30 people, then to a larger camp, Tarutung, then a larger in Pematang Siantar with 300, then to Brastagi, the 300. You know, there were 1,300 in already, so we were 1,600. Then we came into the Aipaminke camp, and that was a camp of 5,000 women and children. And the Japanese were trying to get all of us in a few large camps. And they tried to get us in the middle of Sumatra, because then they felt that we would not be found by the Allied forces. We were already very undernourished. People were dying, malnutrition, infection, dysentery, many other illnesses. People started dying every day. And we could see them, you know, a little lorry, a little train or came by and picked up the dead people. So I have the feeling that somewhere the Japanese knew that they were losing. I don't know exactly, but I have the feeling that they wanted to try to get rid of us in a hurry. And then the atomic bomb fell the 6th. I don't know when they heard it on Sumatra. I have no idea when the Japanese forces heard about it. When again the other one fell the 9th, somebody came in our camp and with the head of our camp and stood on a table and told us that Japan had lost the war and that we would be free. The men out of the men's camps were able to walk towards to our camps and try to find their wives, their children. So one day My dad came just in time for my mother, because my mother was in very poor shape. During the day she was lying outside on a mat. I remember that. And couldn't do anything, couldn't look after us anymore. We just, did whatever we had to do. Only when they told us that the food was coming, then we got up, and otherwise we sat against the barrack. I remember that. We didn't play anymore. I had trouble walking. I was pretty well unable to walk at that point. Despite the misery, the sadness, the confusion, the illness, and really the misery how we had to live, the misery of day and night in the barrack, the screaming of the women who were overworked, the screaming of the children, how we survived, how even in the camp I found the love from my mother, the love from Eva, the love from the Catholic nuns, the love from Mr. Sada. I have asked during my life many times, why did this happen? Why did it have to happen to us? Why to me? Why? There is no why. This happens. War happens. We cannot change it. But what we can change is to come out with our story. So there is understanding, hopefully. And hopefully we can do something about it. Even in the misery we grew up, that there was a sense of hope. That is one lesson Mr. Sada gave me. And it helped me a lot during my years is Ithaca, keep going. Keep going. And keep walking. So, that's what I keep on doing. Keep walking, keep talking, and keep going.
After the war, Miriam went to the Netherlands and eventually became a school teacher, a principal, and a registered nurse. She arrived in Canada in 1965 and continued working as a registered nurse. She is married with 2 sons. She is also a grandmother.
The truth has to be told. I mean, my story is only a small part, and I hope it will be a small part of a larger. And I hope somewhere they listen the same way they listened to me after they raped my mother and let me go. They looked at me and they listened. They didn't kill me. They didn't kill my mother. And I hope at this time they listen again. If they don't want to listen to adults, listen to the children. There is the beginning. If they want to be honest and truthful to their own children and bring them up in peace and truth and honesty. Go to the beginning and say, this is something we did wrong.